for football at 4. A lot of people, including myself, have had conversations about, all right, what do the Carolina Panthers need to do when it comes to the draft? What are they going to do with the number 8 pick? Is it going to be Jalen Walker, the linebacker, edge guy from Georgia? Maybe they should go Mykel Williams because this high upside. Well, what if so-and-so falls down to them? Should they take Mason Graham? Whatever it might be. That's top of the draft. High priority stuff. I totally get it. But that doesn't mean you still can't address other needs on your team. And there are a couple positions that, believe it or not, in the NFL draft are super deep and also are maybe some areas of need, maybe under the radar, that the Carolina Panthers need to address. Unfortunately, one of those positions is running back. I know Chuba Hubbard's the guy. Let me just go ahead and make sure I get that out there. Chuba Hubbard is the dude. He's the number 1. But what do you have after that? Miles Sanders making over $8 million a year. Miles Sanders, as your number 2 back, making that much money? That much money counting against your salary cap when you have so many other needs? Is that someone worth keeping? My assumption is, even though that Miles Sanders had a strong end of the game strong final game to end the year last year, my feeling is that Miles Sanders is probably going to be gone once the offseason actually does hit. His salary cap hit next year, $8.1 million. If you do let him go, his cap hit is just under $3 million. So you're going to save about $5.1 million by letting him go. That could be a starting safety, maybe. Maybe not a high end, but at least somebody. Or that's money used to help find a starting safety. It's also money that goes into your pool. You have to pay your draft picks. You have to keep up that cap space for them as well. So my assumption is that Miles Sanders is going to be gone from the team after this year. They paid him a lot of money a couple years ago. The start of the season, it was Chuba Hubbard was the guy, and he was pretty much the entire year. But what about after that? The Panthers drafted Jonathon Brooks in the 2nd round last year. They had an early 2nd round pick that they traded down and then moved back up in the 2nd round to draft Jonathon Brooks, who was coming off an ACL injury his final year at Texas. He suffered the injury in November of 2023. The Panthers drafted him knowing, hey, he's going to take a little bit to come back from the knee injury, might not be ready to go at the start of the year, but they understood that. They actually let it go all the way through the bye week after they played in Germany to get Jonathon Brooks into a couple of games. And he did play in a few, but then a non-contact knee injury, retore the same ACL. Unfortunate thing to see because you saw glimpses of that playmaking ability that he displayed at Texas. He was supposed to be what Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit is to David Montgomery, their running back duo. He was supposed to be that with Chuba Hubbard. You could see it when they actually were on. You see him on the field, the few touches that he got. But he re-tears the ACL nearly a year after he tore it at Texas. So you're going into this upcoming season of, well, you can't anticipate, even if it's the same timeline of his rehab coming back, you can't even anticipate him being back until the latter half of the season at the earliest. If not, he's going to miss the entire year. So who's going to be your number 2 back? Who's going to be the complement to the heavy workload and the tough running that Chuba Hubbard provides? Who's going to be that change of pace guy? Again, we are starting to see the trend in the NFL going back to the 2 running back system, much like the Carolina Panthers have seen over the course of their franchise's lifetime. From the early days of Deshaun Foster and Stephen Davis to D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, the 1-2 combination. Who's going to be that second guy? And by all accounts, this NFL draft is loaded with running backs. People are praising it, the depth that you can find. You can find great running backs, guys that can help your team in like the 4th and 5th round. a lot of really, really good running backs that can come into the league. Some are projecting 30 could be drafted. Last time I checked, there are 32 teams. Are the Panthers in that market? They have 9 picks, including multiple in the 4th, 5th rounds. Do you find someone? I'll throw a name out there. Brashard Smith, SMU. He was a wide receiver at Miami. Transfers to SMU. They turn him into a running back. Great pass catcher. Not a big guy, but is someone that you can move in different spots on the field. He could be a back out of the backfield that catch passes. You can line him up in the slot. Similar to what the Panthers were using with Miles Sanders when we saw Miles Sanders on the field with Chuba Hubbard at the same time. So can you find that kind of similar role, but for cheaper price? Again, and use the money elsewhere. Maybe that's a guy. I'm not saying that's who they draft, but someone like him. Can you find a complement? You need to have some running back depth because guy gets hurt. You got to be able to rely on somebody. Simple as that. Second position, it's tight end. Maybe that complement at tight end is still Tommy Tremble. Maybe you bring him back. He's been with the franchise for 4 years. He was drafted under Matt Rule, played under Frank Reich, played under Dave Canales. Maybe he is that number 2 tight end with Jadeveon Sanders. Jadeveon Sanders going into his 2nd year. And both those guys dealt with injuries this past year, so we never fully, for stretches of games, really got to see Tommy Tremble and Jadeveon Sanders on the field together. So still, again, a bit of a question about what those two can do. But the trend also we see in the NFL, along with a 2 running back or a tandem running back system, a lot of 2 tight end sets. 2 tight end sets give you a ton of versatility. You can run, you can spread the field out and throw as well. It gives you a ton of versatility, and the defense really can't change their personnel. But by all accounts, this is a pretty deep tight end draft too, where you can find someone really good that can step in and play right away as a number 2 tight end in the 4th, 5th round. Do the Panthers also go that route? These are just, again, under the radar positions that the Carolina Panthers still need to consider. Because one thing this team lacked last season across the board, depth. I mean, their roster talent as a whole wasn't good enough as it is, even at full strength. But then all the injuries, especially that they had on defense, this team has to find depth even at the spots where they still feel comfortable with their number 1 guy. You might feel comfortable, hey, Jadeveon Sanders is our starting tight end going into next year. Great. Who's number 2? And who's number 3? I think the Ian Thomas experience, by the way, I think that's done. And that's okay. But you still need to find other pieces that are going to help your roster as a whole. The more depth and versatility that you can have, the better. So yeah, Dan Morgan still needs to think about running back, still needs to think about tight end. I want a ton of attention on the defense, and I think we all can agree upon that, Graham. But these are some under-the-radar things that Dan Morgan still has to take into consideration. You can't have holes in these spots. Because we saw last season when they played Tampa Bay, Graham, when Chuba Hubbard was out, didn't have Jonathan Brooks either, Miles Sanders wasn't ready to go, and it was Mike Boone and other guys.
And it was a disaster day for the offense.
It sucked.
And up until that point, the Carolina Panthers have actually been showing improvement.
Yeah.
On the offensive side of the ball. It's just that one day we didn't have a deep enough running back room. It just showed how ineffective it makes your offense if you don't have the depth and the stability.
You got to have depth and other people you can rely on. You're going to get injuries in the NFL. It just happens. You have to find guys that can at least step in, if it's for a game or two, that can make sure that you stay afloat, not set you back.